The moon was towed here. John, okay, you're back on. That's a heck of a thing to say. The moon was towed here. And it implies, I guess what I'd like to know is, how have you come to believe this to be so?
Okay, let me back up just a second and talk about the experiment. When Lazar worked at the test site, he read documents that mankind was an experiment and that the religions were created by the people who were making the experiment to give us a set of rules and regulations to live by, the Ten Commandments, the Quran, so we wouldn't hurt ourselves during this experiment.
Okay, so these came from, this information really came from what Bob read at Area 51.
That was what started me on figuring out the experiment.
Gotcha.
Then I read that both Democritus and Anaxagoras taught that there was a time when the Earth was without moon. Aristotle also taught that. He taught that Arcadian Greece, before being inhabited by the Hellenes, had a population of aborigines that occupied the land before there was a moon in the sky above the Earth, and for this reason they were called the Proselenes. And then there was a time when there was 2 moons, and of course now there's only 1. So that started me, if there was in recorded history of man, there was a time when there was no moon there. So then I read the book Ringmakers of Saturn, and Norman Bergeron started talking about the machines big enough to put the moon into orbit around the Earth.
But anyway, presumably then our government is well aware, through whatever means they had to get this information, extraterrestrial bodies, contact, all the rest of it. Somehow our government is fully aware of what humans are. We're an experiment.
They have to know all that, yes. And when you say government, it's not congressmen and senators and government that you can see. It's the other guys.
The other guys.
The secret government.
The secret government. And you believe that this secret government manipulates this information. It's not shared with our politicians. It's shared perhaps with some presidents to some degree, or not.
No, not with presidents.
Not with presidents.
As we discussed before on the levels of security clearances, as far as I know, there's 38 levels above top secret. Now, the first 28 are top secret crypto. Then the last 10 are names like Umbra Ultra, the top one being Majestic. Now, the President of the United States has like top secret crypto 17. He doesn't get to know very much for 2 reasons. Number one is the intelligence community has always hated elected or appointed officials, and they don't vet them.
True enough.
And number 2, there's no reason for him to know it. He's in office for 4 or 8 years. He doesn't need to know that kind of stuff.
John, is the President aware that he does not hold the top security clearance?
No, everybody that has a clearance thinks the one he has is the top one.
Is the top, yeah. That would absolutely make sense to me. And so to have knowledge of this, that mankind is an experiment, you would have to be at that top 10 level?
Majestic.
Majestic. So the whole Majestic thing, the Majestic papers that went around the web, around the world, MJ12, real?
Yes, and like I say, for the people who say, what's your source for that, my source, now passed away, was General James H. Doolittle. He was not an MJ12 himself, but he was heavily right there in the middle of it all. He wrote a biography called I Could Never Be So Lucky, and I have never read a more honestly, brutally honest book. And I searched it for the slightest hint of what he was really involved in the later part of his life, but it wasn't there.
Well, can you tell us almost verbatim what the general told you? I mean,
he didn't tell me. Now, here's how it happened. Now, when Moore came out, Moore and Shandera came out with those Eisenhower briefing papers.
Yes.
I wanted to know whether it was real or not, and I knew I had to get to Jimmy Doolittle, but he was retired living in Carmel, California, and I knew I couldn't do it, but he and his wife, Jo, were very, very close to my grandmother and my grandfather and my mom and dad. Now, my grandmother and grandfather had long since passed away. We're talking about 1989, 1990. But Mom was still very much alive, and I approached her and I said, look, I need some information. I want to know if this is real. And she said, okay, well, how can I help you? I said, I need you to call Jimmy and just play it like this. Say, hi, Jimmy, this is William. You know, what's going on? You know, I haven't talked to you in a while. And then say, you know, Jimmy, John has gotten involved in something, and I'm not too excited about it, but I need to know one thing. Is the Majestic 12 real? Now, it took me about 3 or 4 months to get Mom to do that, but she finally worked up her courage and one morning called, and what he said was, yes, Moya, but I can't say anything more about it.
Your mom's all right, John.
She was a trooper.
Yeah, she really was.
That's what did it for me, because everything hinged on those papers. Are they real or not? And,
sure.
As far as I'm concerned, they were real.
So he confirmed it. The general confirmed it to your mom.
Right.
All right. What do you know? If we are an experiment, I guess I would like to know the nature of this experiment.
Wouldn't we all?
Yeah, as much as you do know. I mean, there must be a little more than we are an experiment. Nothing to motive, nothing to...
Well, from what Bob read was the experiment is with the soul. We are referred to as containers. The aliens refer to us as containers. That's all. Just containers. Imagine what the experiment is.
Or whether it's succeeding or failing or still in judgment.
Correct.
Yeah. Why do we need... why was it decided, I wonder, that we need a moon? Anything on that? Yes,
and what happened is Richard Hoagland led me to this, because when I saw his tape about the Mars-Moon connection and talked about the Lunar Orbiter 384M photo showing the tower on the moon,
right,
directly in the center of the moon, in the Sinus Medai, stretching 6 miles high, on a tripod, and a cube on top, a mile on each side, I wondered to myself, what could that be for? What could be an antenna that's, well, first of all, I thought it's got to be an antenna, and it's pointed directly at Earth. Are they trying to record our TV programs? And I thought, no, that's unlikely. These people are millions of years ahead of us. Probably what they're doing is sending, transmitting, and receiving souls. When a person dies, they retract the soul into this machine. When a person is born, they send the soul or transmit the soul. And this has been going on for, however long that thing's been there.
Wow, so you're saying that's how souls get here, that's how souls are retrieved, they're actually received and transmitted from a virtual antenna on the moon?
Yes.
Oh, that's some concept, John. Wow. That's going to take a while to sink in. That's really something, John.
Now, that's why mariners are called lost souls, because if you die underwater, for some reason they can't retract the soul from underwater, and it's lost.
Frequency's not low enough, John. We can talk to subs if you get the frequency low enough. Oh, that's a trip. All right. So then that's the transmitter and the receiver, but there must be a processing center. In other words, something's driving that, or it's a tool of a larger machine, right?
Well, it could be. I think it's all part of that cube on top of the tripod, that sits on top of the tripod, that receives and transmits the souls. Whether they're processed, I don't know. I know this is that we cannot take advantage of lessons we've learned in a previous lifetime, because that information is short-circuited. Now, some people can access that, but it's extremely rare. For some reason, we're not allowed to profit by the mistakes that our soul made in a previous lifetime.
Yes, it seems so unfair, but we don't understand the structure of it all. But yes, I've always thought of that as so unfair. And if what you're saying is true, then that will explain some other things we're going to talk about. But do so you know nothing beyond? I don't even know where to go here. Richard Hoagland, of course, pointed out a number of very large structures on the moon. By the way, Richard's taken a lot of really big heat lately. I guess you're aware of that, huh?
Yeah. There's no single person has done more to expose the NASA cover-up than Richard Hoagland. And, they have various government guys out there that are really gunning for him. We have one on the Fantastic Forum. We call him Yankee Yo-Yo because all he does is badmouth Richard Hoagland, and Richard Hoagland's the good guy.
Richard is either somebody you love or hate, and I speak now of the audience. When he's on, they either love him or they hate him. There's no in-between with Richard.
He has inspired me. I mean, when I saw that video of the 84M, and people say he's arrogant. Well, maybe he is, but he certainly has a lot of information, and I certainly have some disagreements with him, but I don't go around bad-mouthing him on the internet.
No, his passion is evident to all. I mean, detractors and fans alike, his passion is absolutely evident. And, I have disagreements with him, too. I've not seen a lot of the things that he has seen or tried to point out to me, to which he tells me I have two-dimensional vision, which is probably true. So he's an incredible man, and this means that these artifacts and the things he talked about, the things you're talking about now, they really are on the moon. But that bubble is going to get burst pretty soon. If we're keeping it secret, it's not going to be secret very much longer because, other countries are getting ready to go to the moon, John. Then what?
I doubt it'll happen.
Really? Really?
There'll be something to at this point, I'd like to tell you what heroes our astronauts are. These guys, the Apollo astronauts I'm talking specifically about.
Yes, sir.
These guys went to the moon, they saw all that stuff, and then they were told by NASA under threat of, receipt of pension and everything else that they better not talk about it. And they, for the most part, all kept their mouths shut for, how long has it been, 35 years? And if you can just imagine yourself seeing something so astounding as all these structures on the moon and then being told you can't talk about it.
Okay, you know yourself, John, that doing 4 hours on a radio program like this, you said so before the show, you're a little nervous. Everybody's nervous, but after a while that goes away. And I interviewed Dr. Mitchell, actually many times, Edgar Mitchell, and the damnedest thing, doggone-est thing, John, a couple of hours, we were talking, I think Hoagland was there, as a matter of fact, and Hoagland started talking about all the stuff that was on the moon, and Edgar Mitchell, and then Hoagland said something like, I want you to tell me, being on the moon is an emotional, lifetime, incredible experience. Describe your emotions and your thoughts when you were walking on the moon. And there was a long pause, and Dr. Mitchell came back and she said, it's really strange, and now I'm paraphrasing, but I'm very close. It's really strange. I should remember everything in such stark detail, but my memory of what I felt and what I was seeing, it's all kind of foggy, and I don't remember how I felt. And I thought, whoa, was that a weird response?
Yeah, that's what he said in his book. And then there was another astronaut, when he was asked the same question, he says, you know what? All I can think is a pair of black, shiny shoes. That's what the psychological programming comes from. And I had the privilege once of talking with a lady who helped with the psychological programming. She worked for NASA. And she told me how they did it and the problems they had with the astronauts.
And Neil Armstrong, every time he gets in front of the public, he makes he drops some...
Yeah, really? When you say when he gets in front of the public, that's only been, 3 times?
Not very often, but when he does, he says something that makes everybody go, whoa, holy smokes, what does he mean by that?
I think Neil dealt with it by saying, if I can't tell them the truth, I'm not going to tell them anything.
And then there were the other astronauts who had endless trouble, marital troubles, all kinds of different, I mean, obvious psychological, big-time stress of some kind.
Yeah.
So you're saying they saw all this. They know.
They know.
All this.
They know all this.
Do you think that it was explained to them when they got back as part of the debriefing, John, what they saw?
No, I think that what they did was, you saw that? Really? Now, I mean, did the other guys see it? I think they treated them as, you know, little kids or maybe a little bit crazy.
Huh.
It was part of the plan to keep things secret. In other words, when they went, they didn't tell them, now you're going to see these great big structures, so you got to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, I'm just a talk show host, John, but when I hear an answer like that from Mitchell, I go, that's not possible. You were on the moon. You were there. You put your feet on the moon. You walked on the moon. You have to know what it felt like and like what it was in your surroundings. It can't all be sort of a weird memory for you. It just can't be. It can't be. It's the biggest event of your life and of a lot of lives on the planet. You have to remember. But no. I mean, that's too bizarre. So, anyway, maybe you're on to it. I mean, maybe they did see all of this, and maybe they were programmed out of it. And you believe that this antenna is a transmitter of souls, both sending the new ones and receiving the ones that expire.
Right. And you remember a year and a half ago at the Reno Air Races, an astronaut decked a Japanese reporter that came up and said, hey, you guys didn't go to the moon, that's all BS.
Yeah, put him on the ground.
Okay, the reason he did, in my opinion, is the fact that it's not that they didn't go to the moon, it's that they did go to the moon and what they found there. And it was so troubling now to be accused that they didn't go when they did go, and now they've been keeping a secret for all these years of what there was up there. You can imagine how troubling that would be.
What do you think they were told, John, in the end, to force them to keep that secret? Do you think they were told part of what was in what I call the Lear test?
No. I just think they were said, you can't do it. That's all there is.
Yeah, it wouldn't be enough. I mean, you would have to say enough to an astronaut. This is such a magnificent thing to withhold from mankind that not only are ETs here, but ETs are on the moon. The evidence is real close by, relatively. And this for mankind is like the biggest thing there could possibly be. So you've got to give someone a pretty good reason not to talk about that.